Hey, so it's the end of the year, and with that comes a borderline compulsory end of the year list. That's what everybody does. That's what I'm going to do. It's top 10 list time. Whoa! Except this time I'm going to do a top 15. This is my top 15 movies of 2024. Now do keep in mind, I haven't seen everything. I haven't seen The Substance yet. I haven't seen Anora. I haven't seen a bunch of the kind of like Oscar picks and all that stuff, because usually those movies don't come out until like January, February here in Australia. Also keep in mind, this is all just my opinion. So like chill out if any of it drives you insane or something, which some of these picks just might, but we'll get to that. Right, so coming in at number 15 is a kind of obscure pick. I know this is like a good show-offy, I'm a movie nerd type of pick, but it's a movie called Last Straw, which is an indie horror movie that's basically all set within like a diner, like a roadside diner kind of thing. And it's mostly all set in one night, but it's also told out of chronological order. It's definitely not the most hyped up film on this list. Not a lot of people have seen it or are talking about it or anything like that, but I think it has kind of like early Tarantino vibes to it, although with more of an horror edge to it, which is, you know, very up my alley. I found it to be quite unique, even if it's not the most unique story ever. The way it's told is kind of unique, and I do think that it's really well done. Again, this is not a movie that you might not have even heard of it or anything like that, and I'm such a movie expert that I've seen it, I guess. No, I only know of its existence because of the Cinematics podcast. Anyway, yeah, Last Straw, pretty sick. I like it a lot. Then at number 14 is another kind of obscure movie, to be honest. You might not have heard of this one either. Look at me. Ooh, I'm not trying to show off. I'm just like, I don't know. These are my picks. Shut up. Person who's not talking. I'm in this room by myself. Anyway, so the next one is Greedy People. This is the movie with the worst title on this list, I would say. It's like just so basic. There's no nuance to it. It's like, yep, that's what it's about. Basically, it's like, what are the themes of this movie? Greedy people. Why don't we just call it that? It's a bit dumb, but anyway, no, but it's a pretty good movie in the realm of like Fargo or something like that. This movie feels like it could basically be another like season of the Fargo TV show or something. It's got Joseph Gordon-Levitt in it and a bunch of like weird small town characters who all have their own personal motivations in this little crime thriller story that's sort of lighthearted as well. This is like sort of a comedy, drama, thriller kind of thing, as all of the characters involved are, you know, going after something in some way, usually money or whatever, and usually doing crime to get whatever it is that they want. And that doesn't sound super unique when I explain it in that way. And it's not, I suppose. It does remind me of, yeah, things like Fargo, like I said, or I don't know, something like maybe The Nice Guys or something like that. It's a little bit on that sort of level. That being said, I like that level. Then at number 13 is Terrifier 3. You were probably expecting this to be on my list if you know who I am, if you're familiar with the channel at all. I will say this movie kind of did let me down in some ways. I don't think it's as good as number 2, but I still think it's much better than 1 and All Hallows Eve and all that other stuff. Art the Clown is an icon at this point, although I do have to say that I often think that Art the Clown himself as a character often is better than the movies that he actually appears in, if that makes sense. I kind of think that applies with Terrifier 3. I'm not exactly sure. I still enjoyed my time with it quite a lot. I still consider it to be one of my favorite movies of the year. I just didn't think it really touched on 2, unfortunately. As it kind of tried to one-up itself in every single scene, it started to feel a little bit like, yeah, okay, but like this doesn't have that, I don't know, lightning in a bottle feel that Terrifier 2 had. For whatever reason, it was just the one that like everything was firing on all cylinders or whatever. Like whatever cliche term you want to use there. There was just something special about Terrifier 2. Anyway, Terrifier 3 though, there are moments in here that I love when Art the Clown sees Santa Claus and he gets all excited and shit. I love that kind of weird juxtaposition between the innocent side of Art the Clown and the very, very sadistic, unrelenting side of Art the Clown as he viciously tears into his victims and all that stuff in other scenes. The scene in which explosives are involved made me laugh out loud, and I was in cinemas by myself in a packed crowd though, so it was kind of a fun one to see with a crowd in that way. And at those kind of more daring moments where they kind of push the boundaries and stuff really made it that much more uncomfortable, and for that reason even funnier, I would say. And I like how this movie dug into the lore a little bit more in terms of where Art the Clown came from and, you know, what the trajectory of this series is gonna be within the next like movie or 2 or however many they end up making. Next up at number 12 is Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, and I saw this with a couple of my friends very apprehensively. They kind of talked me into it. I was like, yeah, I don't know, I don't really care. I vaguely remember seeing Beetlejuice at one point when I was younger, but like, I don't have nostalgia for it. I don't really remember it that well. I did not give a shit. I was not in a rush to see Beetlejuice. It was not on my high priority list at all. But I ended up seeing it, and well, obviously it's appearing on this list. I ended up fucking loving this thing. It is so wacky and unapologetic with that wackiness. Every single moment has all these visual sight gags and stuff in the background. Michael Keaton playing the character, he's kind of a scumbag, and I like that. He's not like this traditional hero, he's basically the villain, but he's also not like Art the Clown villainy. He's just like selfish and gross and stuff. And I kind of like that there's like this, you know, basically blockbuster that's just about this guy who's weird and creepy, but also kind of like supernatural and stuff like that. I don't know, there's just something to it. Like there's horror elements to it, but it's more lighthearted and it's a bit of a comedy and stuff. And it's just very fun. I don't know, Willem Dafoe's pretty funny in it. There's a lot of side characters here where they probably don't need to be in it. Not everything I think really applies so like tightly to the story. It's not like this movie that you see for its tightly written screenplay where everything fits together. It's more just like you're watching it for the little moments in between everything else that's going on within the plot, if that makes any sense. I had a lot of fun with it. I even leaned over to my friend during this movie where I was basically like, this is the best movie ever. And sure, that was hyperbole, but I was feeling it in the moment, you know, and that's a good sign. Next up at 11 is Strange Darling. Now, this is another movie that kind of has Tarantino feels to it, as it's told out of chronological order, much like Last Straw. And again, also has horror elements, also thriller elements, I would say, as this is basically about the traditional story of a woman being chased by a killer man, presumably. It kind of turns things on its head in some unexpected ways, and I think it's a very cleverly told story. There are some readings of this story where things start to look a little bit icky if you want to look at it in a political sense. That's why it's not quite at the very top of my list, but if you enjoy it just as a film on its own, I kind of think like that side of things, you might be looking too much into it. I'm not really sure of what its intents are. I think it just happens to be these characters have these motivations. They don't necessarily have to be a representative of their entire gender, race, etc. And so with this movie, Strange Darling, overall, I would say that it's very cleverly written, much different to Beetlejuice. I would say this is a movie that you should see primarily for its screenplay. I think it's really clever. It's really smart in that sort of way. And number 10 is Trap, M. Night Shyamalan's Trap. I love this movie. It makes no sense. So if you don't know, this is about a like serial killer called the Butcher who is attending this concert with his daughter and soon finds out that basically the entire concert has been set up as a trap to catch this killer that he is. And basically the movie is about him trying to get out of this situation. It's all pretty much an episode of Dexter. That makes me love it, you know, as he's like this smart serial killer guy just getting away with everything all the time. And it's really fun in that sort of way. But I would say that a lot of it doesn't make sense. There are so many plot holes. Like he's worried about going through security upon exit, like after the concert, right? Why? Because there's going to be cops. They're going to be interviewing him or interrogating him or whatever you want to call it. But my question is, what are they going to do when he does go up to them? What? They're going to ask, are you the Butcher? He's going to say no. They're going to say, oh, okay, cool. See ya. Like, there's no proof of him being the Butcher, even if they do see him. There is a slight explanation where they're like, oh, he's got I think it's a rabbit tattoo or something on his wrist, so look for that. But come on, that's not proof of a crime, having a similar tattoo to somebody. It's a start, but it's definitely not a like damning evidence. There's just so many things in here that I don't think really make sense in that kind of way. There's the t-shirt seller guy who just like trusts this dude who turns out to be a serial killer just because he was nice to his daughter for a moment and he witnessed it, and it doesn't make any sense as he leaves like this very obviously what would be a busy job in real life of selling merch and stuff to everybody, to just like go to the back and give this one guy a piece of merch for free, I guess. Like, why do all these things happen? It's all contrived, it's all bullshit, but it's all also in service of telling this Dexter-esque story of Josh Hartnett getting away with everything, and for that it's really fun. I love the moment where he pushes a woman down the stairs as a distraction. It's just like, you dick. I love it. I don't know, everything about it's just kind of dumb. There's also this moment where he goes up to the one Indian man in this entire stadium, and it turns out that, oh yeah, the one Indian guy is the fucking uncle of the pop star singer. Like, what? And before you say it's racist, racist. It's M. Night Shyamalan playing this guy. He made it so that was the case. It's just like odd decisions from start to finish. I love it. Anyway, next up, still at number 10. I'm cheating. I've got 2 movies at number 10 here. Whoa, you didn't see it coming. This is actually a top 16 list of movies. Whoa, did I blow your mind like M. Night Shyamalan would have? Yeah, probably. So, next up at number 10, again, 10B is Joker 2, and I'm not fucking with you. This is my real opinion. I think Joker 2 is quite phenomenal. This is not a joke. I'm not just being a contrarian here. I'm not just being a smartass. I think Joker 2 is great. Now, a lot of people look at Joker 2 as kind of like this betrayal of the first film and kind of a fuck you to the fans of the first one, saying like, oh yeah, it goes against everything that the first one was about. And I cannot comprehend that opinion in any way at all. It just literally continues the story of the first Joker. It reiterates everything. Basically, Arthur Fleck is and always has been this pathetic man who is not going to turn out to be the Joker who we know to go on to fight Batman, but who instead just inspires whoever the real Joker is, I guess it's the guy at the end of this film, through his kind of accidental political revolution that he sets up from the first film. Basically, Arthur Fleck has no political affiliation or intent. He's not doing any of this on purpose. He just accidentally builds this crowd of loyal followers who are following him for the wrong reasons and misunderstanding what he's about. All Arthur Fleck has ever done and wanted to do is inflict violence in order to feel a sense of power for the first time in his life, because he's a sad, pathetic, lonely man who has a mental illness and is just not stable in any way. And that's been the case from the first film to the second. It's the exact same story. The second one's just continuing it. I do not know how you can think anything has been contradicted or betrayed or is any different from the first to the second. It's the same story. And with that, I guess you could complain that the second one's unnecessary because it's pretty much just reiterating the same fact that we already know. And I kind of agree with that, I suppose. But I still think that 2 is well done enough that it justifies its existence. And I just don't understand everybody's problem with it. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a really clever character study on Arthur Fleck. No, I don't think that he is exactly the embodiment of the Joker that Heath Ledger or whoever Jack Nicholson plays, because he's not that character. He inspires that character. That's just my opinion, but it feels like that was basically very apparent within the first film as well. I'm pretty sure the guy that kills Batman's parents in the first film that we get a brief glimpse of right at the very end, and he's imprisoned for killing them, and that's who the Joker's gonna be. I don't know. I don't know if that's subtext or text, or if I'm just reading into things, but that's how I read it. That's what I think about it. And when it comes to the musical aspect of Joker 2, by the way, it doesn't bother me. I don't care really one way or the other. I don't love it. I don't really like musicals in general all that much, but I don't really think that it ruins anything because it's also all in this like line of Arthur Fleck's delusions. And so it's not really happening in reality, all these musical moments, you know? It's all in his head, much like his girlfriend in the first film and things like that. Like we know, he imagines things and stuff. Like this is consistent with this character. He's a pathetic man who kills people and hurts people and stuff for happiness and power and whatever. And now in the second one, he sings because why not? I don't know. I know I'm very alone on this. I'm basically the only person in the world that likes this movie, but this is my opinion. I'm so sorry if that offends you or something. All right, now we're up to number 9, and that is It's What's Inside, which is a Netflix horror, sci-fi, thriller, comedy film. All those genres really mixed up together. It's mainly a thriller with a comedic edge to it that's told at a very, very fast pace. This is a movie that does not hold your hand. It doesn't slow down for you. You have to really pay attention, but it's also like got kind of a light-hearted feel to it where it's like not really deep down and heavy and stuff. It's not like Primer in terms of you have to pay attention to it or else you'll be lost in terms of like, oh, well, this is just like confusing bullshit and I don't care. It's more like confusing bullshit in an exhilarating way where you're trying to keep up with what's going on, but it's also told in a really, really fun way. There's some shots in here that I really love too. The lighting and stuff. It's got, I guess you would call it bisexual lighting, some people call it. I don't really understand that term, but it basically means it's like pink and blue and purple and stuff around. The whole movie basically looks like that, and that's kind of fun for me. But also there's this shot where they're telling like a flashback of a story in this film, and they show like photos, but as the voiceover is being told, as they're explaining the flashback, the story is kind of getting changed as it goes along, and the photos kind of change, and it's just like this interesting little technique I've never really seen done before. It's a tiny thing, it's not like a huge representation of the entire movie overall, but it's just something that I found really memorable from it. Overall, I don't really want to say what this is about, but just to give you a hint, I was watching this film and at one point I was like, holy shit, this is like Scooby-Doo. Just for a hint there without actually like spoiling it, that's what this movie is, and it's really fun and I enjoy it. Next up at number 8 is Smile 2, and I actually think that Smile 2 is better better than the first film. And that's saying quite a lot because I'm quite a big fan of the first one. I do have some issues like the big giant stupid monster at the end of the first one, and that one's here too. But anyway, it really just executes everything in a really, really intense way. I'm not usually one that's very scared of movies. You know, I watch a lot of horror movies and stuff, and I'm pretty okay pretty much all the time. I don't really care all that much about jump scares and stuff. It doesn't usually get to me all that much. But with Smile 2, I'm just sitting on the fucking edge of my seat the entire time. I should have got a refund for half my seat because only half the seat was used. No, but seriously, like, there was something about this movie where it's like there's this scene where the main character is just in her apartment and her like fellow dancers, because she's like a pop star or whatever, her dancers are in her apartment and they're doing the creepy smile and stuff and like dancing towards her in this really scary way. And there was just something about it where I'm like, that is the creepiest fucking image I've seen all year. And I don't know, there was something about things like this that stuck in my brain as I came home after seeing this. Came home to my home alone and I'm just like, oh God, those dancers are going to come out at me smiling or something. I'm scared right now. So I watched the Seth Rogen comedy, The Interview, just to like ease my spooks a little bit. Yeah, there was just something really effective about this film. I fucking love Smile 2, to be honest. And the fact that this film is about a pop star, like I said, who is famous, it allows for much more opportunity for, you know, scary, unexpected moments where you don't know what the people around her are going to do and all this stuff as the kind of suicide curse looms closer and closer to her and gaining her paranoia throughout. I will say I had some issues with some of the things later on that turn out to be like, oh, this part wasn't real and this part wasn't real. It's all in your head because of the curse. I thought it started to take itself a little bit out of the believability realm, I suppose. But overall, I still thought it was highly effective. I'll definitely be rewatching it. And the opening like 7 or so minutes long take is incredible stuff as well. Thought I should mention that. Next up at 7 is Abigail. Abigail is probably the most fun movie of the year, I would say. It is basically just about a little like Dracula girl or whatever, killing people one by one while they're stuck overnight in a mansion. And so, yeah, it's not high art. It's not the most fucking like intellectual stuff you've ever seen. But it is very well done in terms of what it's trying to be. And that is a horror comedy. It made me laugh. It had some bloody shit. And it was a hell of a good time. It's definitely the most fun I had in cinemas this year, I would say. And yeah, it's awesome. Next up at 6 is Late Night with the Devil, which I think is maybe the most creative movie on this list, as it's told in a very unique way in basically like this real-time telling of a late night talk show that's going on with the host interviewing people and all that stuff, but then like creepy supernatural shit happens also. And so the whole thing is basically just like this hour talk show told from the perspective of the TV show cameras, and it's just really interesting more than anything, I guess. There's even like ad breaks where we get glimpses of behind the scenes and we see the difference between the like happy smiling on camera faces of people and then like what they really think in between and things like that. Is it the scariest film ever? I wouldn't exactly say that or anything, but I did find it to be something that had me really thinking. This is an intellectual film, I would say. The only thing about this film is that it caught a bit of flack this year because it used some very minimal AI imagery in it, and I get the fight there. I understand it's a slippery slope. As soon as you allow any bit of this into anything, it's just going to get worse and worse, and I don't exactly think it's a good thing, but I think that the film overall is creative enough to way outweigh the issues, if that makes any sense. It's doing a lot of other creative things, whereas there are other movies that I imagine use AI and we don't even know about it that aren't nearly as creative, that are much bigger issues that people aren't talking about. This one just caught flack. It got attention for it because it got caught up in the news of it using AI for whatever reason. But yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of other examples that we haven't quite picked up on yet. And it's kind of a scary thought, really, like how they sneak these sorts of things in. I didn't even notice it during the movie, and I knew about it before I saw it, so I was actually looking for it, and I kind of realized, I guess, what the AI images were afterwards, where I'm like, oh, okay, there were some like images in this movie where it was basically, we're going on a short break or whatever. I guess those were the AI images, but they aren't really that egregiously noticeable. And so maybe that's not a good thing. I don't know. But overall, I still think that the film is fantastic in every single other way. And I think it's more important to recognize the brilliant filmmaking beyond the slightly problematic little thing there. I don't think it's big enough. I don't think it was used enough to be too much of an issue to say, fuck this movie forever. I think it's worth watching. I think it's something that we should support in terms of showing the good part of it, if that makes any sense. Next up, we're talking honorable mentions, because this is a list of favorites. You always got to do honorable mentions. And I guess that really turns this 16 favorite movie list into a 17, 18, 19, 20 list. This is a top 20 list now. All right, so I'm just going to go through these quickly. Honorable mentions. Under Paris. This is a foreign language film. French, it's in Paris, but obviously. It's about sharks, and they're like angry sharks, and they kill a bunch of people. There's this one shot of like somebody who's like comes out of the water and the shark follows up and bites, as sharks do in movies a lot of the time. I love silly shark movies, and we got a good one this year. Next up is Speak No Evil. James McAvoy is amazing in this film, and it's just a really solid thriller. I'm not a huge fan of the original film that this is a remake of. I actually thought this one was a lot better. It was a little bit more Hollywoodized, I would say as well, though, so I'm not exactly proud of the fact that I heavily enjoy it a lot more, but I can't deny it. I do. This was a lot of fun. Then there is also a very small obscure movie called Molly and Max in the Future, which is this kind of sci-fi dramedy, I guess you would say, as it follows two people throughout like a decade of their lives or so, and we see them like in and out every time they sort of reunite and see how their lives have changed in the time between they saw each other last. It's kind of got like a before sunrise, sunset vibe to it, but it's also a lot more silly and sci-fi focused than that, as it's about these people who are basically living in like this very futuristic world, flying spaceships and all this shit. But despite all the crazy shit going on with, I don't know, alien creatures and whatever else, all the sci-fi shit, it's also a very somehow grounded, relatable film where it just feels like a movie depicting people in their 20s. And it just felt like, I know these people, I am these people, that kind of thing. And it really made me feel, it really made me laugh. And honestly, this would probably be number 17 on the list. So it's very good and probably deserves to be on the list. Fuck it. It's 17. Next up, The Fall Guy with Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. This is a movie basically celebrating stuntmen, and it's shot set in Sydney, which is kind of fun. And yeah, there's not much to say about it really. It's kind of like a basic comedy action movie or whatever. It's a bit like a Marvel movie, but it's not associated with Marvel or anything like that at all. It's just an original film. Actually, that's not true. It was based on some old TV show I'd never heard of the same name, The Fall Guy. But to me, it was an original story. Alright, now we're up to the top 5, my favorite movies of the year, starting off with number 5, Last Stop in Yuma County. This is a Jim Cummings movie, and it's basically very much like I said with Greedy People, a sort of Fargo-esque story, as it's all about these people who wind up in another small town diner, like a roadside sort of diner thing in the middle of nowhere, where they have all run out of petrol. This petrol station is waiting on the truck to deliver the petrol or gas or whatever you want to call it. I guess they're in America, so they would call it gas. So basically everybody ends up being stranded in this place, and there happens to be a robbery taking place this same day, and a holdup takes place within this diner. And so nobody has anywhere that they can go, everybody's stuck in place, and some violence, breaks loose. And basically it's about the very morally questionable actions that take place following this sort of stick up at this diner, and it's very well done. And yeah, just the whole thing is very tense, but it's definitely a lot of fun as well. This is a high recommend. Yeah, again, if you like anything like Fargo, it's definitely similar to that. Next up at 4 is Wicked. And fuck me, if there is a movie that I was not expecting to be on my top 10 list. Oh my god, like I said with Beetlejuice, I was absolutely not in a rush to see this thing. I did not see it day one. I saw it like a week later because I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I care. I guess I'll go see it. Saw it with my mum, and we fucking love Wicked. I've gone Wicked mad since. Wicked wild. I've been looking up interviews of Wicked. I've been looking up the behind the scenes stuff and the kind of comparisons of the original play and all that stuff. I've been looking at just I've gone insane when it comes to Wicked. I fucking love it. I even watched The Wizard of Oz afterwards just to be like, well, how does this compare? How is the witch portrayed in this? I just wanted to say I was interested. I'm interested in this world now. A world that I really didn't give a shit that much about before. That being said, when I watched The Wizard of Oz, I'm like, fuck, this ain't no Wicked. I know, obviously it inspired it. There'd be no Wicked without The Wizard of Oz, but Wicked is far superior to most things. I love Wicked so fucking much. I did say earlier in this video when it came to Joker 2 that I don't really like musicals, and I don't think I say with La La Land behind me. I don't know, man. I guess there are some exceptions. And when it comes to Wicked, I even loved the music. I loved the scene where Ariana Grande is like swimming on the floor, I guess is how you would describe it. She was hilarious in this movie, by the way. I don't think I've ever seen her acting in anything else. I know she was in some Disney show way back in the day, but I've never seen whatever show that is. I really had no expectations. And yeah, she blew me away in terms of her like comedic chops and stuff. And just everything about it. I don't know. I didn't know anything about the story going in, so I didn't think it was going to be like intellectual in any way. I didn't know that there were going to be like any political allegories or anything like that in this film. I didn't know it was going to be about sort of rebelling, I suppose. It's about how the witch becomes the Wicked Witch of the West, I suppose. But really, it's much more of a sympathetic look on this villain, and I fucking love that stuff. This is basically like the Breaking Bad of the Wicked Witch of the West as we watch her devolve or evolve, depending on how you look at it, because the Wizard of Oz, as this kind of explains it, is sort of portrayed in like a propaganda kind of way, where like we buy into the wizard being this great guy and whatever. But if you look at things from the witch's point of view, you know, it's kind of like Anakin. From my point of view, you're the Sith, you're the bad guy or whatever. I don't know. It was just a lot more complex than I was expecting it to be. It's based on like what used to be, I guess, aimed at children and is like a musical and stuff. I don't know. I just thought it was going to be like a Disney princess kind of film, even though it's not Disney. But like, I thought it was going to be that kind of thing. Like maybe there's a love triangle thing, and there is, but I thought it was going to be more just that, and they sing and they learn to grow up together or something like that. But it's a lot more complex than that. There's a lot more to it. It's a lot more nuanced, and I really appreciate it. Next up at number 3 is Civil War. This was easily one of my favorite films of the year instantly as soon as I saw it. This is Alex Garland, who did Men and what's the other one? Annihilation and Ex Machina. I would say Civil War is by far my favorite movie of his now. Basically, it's about a fictionalized civil war in like the near future America. And this movie caught some flack earlier in the year because it's a movie that kind of united some of the American states in unconventional ways. I think it was Texas and California who were working together on one side, and everyone kind of pointed out like, well, that's not very realistic. But to me, the whole point was that, well, that's sort of the point. He's trying to make it apolitical. He's trying to make it like this is not in any way about today's politics. They're not like fighting for the reasons that people would today. The actual reason for the conflict doesn't matter. The actual point of the film is about the conflict itself and what happens because of general conflict, I suppose. And I think it's really interesting in that way. I think it portrays war in a very unfavorable light. It's not the first to do it, but it does it in a very interesting way to me. And I thought that it was a very just well done adult film, if that makes any sense. Not adult film in that kind of way, but like it's just like a big blockbuster kind of movie for adults, if that makes sense. It didn't feel dumbed down. It wasn't this Marvel movie or whatever. You know, like, not that I dislike Marvel or anything. I got a bunch of them over here, but I'm just saying, like, it was good. I don't know. It was good. Now at number 2, next up is The Iron Claw. And I know I'm going to be the only one talking about this movie at this point of the year. I know, this happens every single year. I'm sorry. Australia didn't get it till January. I count The Iron Claw as a 2024 movie. I don't give a shit if you saw it in 2023. I didn't. I couldn't. I don't care if it's listed as 2023 on IMDb or Letterboxd or whatever. It didn't come out here where I am until 2024. It's a 2024 movie. Fuck yeah. Anyway, that being said, with that out of the way, The Iron Claw is easily the most emotional film that I saw all year. The whole thing is definitely very sad, but not so much in just this very cynical way. There's something about it where it's like you feel for the characters because you feel close to them. You get where they're coming from. You feel the conflict between the sort of like family members, the brothers and everything. You get the brotherly bond, the sort of rivalry that takes place because of the father's point of view and how he sort of pits them together. You get angry at this father figure who's kind of like this asshole guy. It's all about wrestling as well, which is not a topic I give a shit about, but there's something about it when it comes to this movie where I'm like, I kind of understand the appeal a little bit more. I think that this movie did a lot in terms of making me feel, making me understand their kind of lifestyle, and making me really heavily sympathize with the real life people that it's based on. And I just think that it's easily one of the best films of the year that anybody and everybody probably probably would like if they watched it and had any sense of maturity. If you don't have any sense of maturity, you'll probably be like, wow, this is the most boring movie ever. But if you are just a decent, smart human being, you will probably like this movie. I think it's pretty undeniably, objectively fantastic. And for me, this was my number one movie all the way throughout the year until I saw number one, which is Heretic. Fuck me, do I love Heretic. Basically, if you don't know, this is a movie about, they're not Jehovah's Witnesses, but they're like religious girls going door to door to try to get people to convert to their religion. I don't know what you call them. Anyway, doesn't matter. The point is, these girls show up at Hugh Grant's house, not the actor, but the character that he's playing. And Hugh Grant's character turns out to be this basically psychopath who wants to convince them that they're wrong about their religion, or at least explore the idea of what is right and wrong, and is religion true or not, and all this stuff, as he basically mansplains religion to them for an hour and a half. And a lot of people would look at this movie as being extra boring because it literally is just mainly, for the most part, these three people in like three different rooms talking for the entire film. And I get that that might sound dry upon sort of just description, but when you're actually watching this thing, it's absolutely riveting in every single way. The sort of arguments that take place when it comes to religion is very compelling. They're all very convincing in what they're trying to say, and I find the subject very interesting. Even though I'm not a religious person in my personal life or anything, I do find the subject interesting and fascinating to sort of learn about and talk about. And I also find it very, I guess, relatable in terms of being kind of like, oh, well, what's after death? That's sort of like this scary idea and stuff. And that's very much what this film revolves around. And it's also sort of, as well, on the surface, I gotta say, basically like a Saw film, but for religion, as Hugh Grant is basically the Christian Catholic Jigsaw or whatever. It's like all about deadly games and stuff to an extent. That part's not as much of an emphasis as the general conversation is, and the mystery of what Hugh Grant's character's intentions are, and basically the slow burn, drawn out like creepiness of what is he going to do next. You don't really know. You don't want to like burn the bridge with this dude. You want to be careful. You want to stay polite. You don't want to ignite him, basically. And then when shit hits the fan and stuff, this film just keeps intensifying, and it gets kind of scarier as it goes along. There are some things in here where I started to get a bit worried about what direction it was going to go in, if it was going to definitively choose a side, if it was going to go into the supernatural or anything like that. I was worried about it not being able to pull off the ending, but I would say that it's pretty much a perfect film all the way through. Very much up my alley. I highly recommend it to any of my horror fans out there. And yeah, I love it very, very much. It's easily, I would say, my favorite movie of the year. Easily. Look, the top 5 are very close, I will say, but I feel like there was no doubt. As soon as I saw Heretic, I'm like, this is a 5-star film. It's a very contemplative movie, and it's just very interesting in that way. I love it. I love it very, very much. Heretic is awesome. So yeah, those are my favorite movies of the year, and that's it. That's all I have to say. Let me know what you think, if you agree and stuff, if you think I'm crazy for including Joker 2 anywhere on this list in any way at all. But what do you think of the rest of them as well? Please don't get blinded just by my Joker 2 forgiveness, I guess we'll call it. Tell me what you think of all the other movies I got here too. Give me your list. All that general shit in the comments, do that. And that's all I gotta say. Thanks for watching. Do the things, jar, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that shit. And bye.